Well, we were talking about the public defender that's squatting in the LA County DA's office, and it looks like the DAs are fighting back, and they've found a legal avenue to do so.
Well, one of the ways they're going to do that is this lawsuit that was filed last week that says that the DA is putting the Association of Deputy DAs in some legal hot water. Joining us to talk more about this, the president of the Association of Deputy DAs, Michele Hanisee, joining us once again on the show. Michele, how are you today?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good. Happy New Year and all of that good stuff. Tell us about this lawsuit. What is it, and what is the hope that the judge will allow the deputy DAs to do?
Well, the lawsuit is about this. Our new boss, newly elected district attorney, has put out a series of directives, very lengthy directives, but many of the provisions of those directives order the attorneys in our office to do things that violate the law, that don't follow the law. As attorneys, we've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution, and we're required to uphold the law. We could get sanctioned or disbarred if we don't. But now we have our boss telling us to disobey the law, and our boss could potentially fire us for not following his orders. So we've been placed in an impossible position. Do we follow our legal and ethical responsibilities and risk getting disciplined or fired, or do we follow his directives and violate the law and risk losing our license to practice law? It's a terrible place to be.
How was this received by the judge who handled the complaint?
Well, I don't know. The judge who handled the complaint is not now the judge who's assigned for the hearing.
Okay.
It was initially heard by a newer judge in what's called writs and receivers, and then it was transferred to another judge in that department who will hear all the case and all of the issues. And it's set for briefing this month for the parties to file their papers and for a hearing in front of that judge on February the 2nd.
Now, could the judge act sooner? Because we were talking before you came on about what's going on with the DA's office and this guy who is going around the backs of prosecutors just last week offering a murderer, a gang murderer, a plea deal behind the back of the prosecutor that was handling the case. Is there any sort of way that the judge could speed up the ruling on this if you can present more evidence that this is happening?
Now that he's set a briefing schedule, that won't be expedited. The case will not be heard until February 2nd. We had initially asked for a temporary restraining order, and the judge was not seeming, the first judge that was hearing the case was not seeming inclined to grant that. So we withdrew the request. And for now, our attorneys are going to have to live with the circumstance for, another 30 days until we have a hearing in front of the court.
Are judges continuing to fight back? I know there have been anecdotal cases where the judges have just not been in line with these new reforms.
I wouldn't call it fighting back. They're following the law.
Yeah.
They're not being obstreperous or difficult by following the law. That is exactly what a judge is sworn to do, to neutrally and impartially enforce the law and apply the law in each individual case. So they're only doing what we want to do. They're following the law.
Have you ever heard of anything like this before? I mean, we've seen disputes between some deputy DAs and a DA in random offices around the country. I mean, there will be disagreements with how cases are handled or philosophies of prosecution, but this is the entire, as far as I can tell, the entire population that makes up deputy DAs in Los Angeles who are upset with the guy who is now their boss.
And again, I wouldn't necessarily term it as upset with the boss. They have taken an oath on more than one occasion, first when they were sworn in as attorneys, and the second time when they were sworn in as deputy district attorneys, an oath where you raise your right hand and you swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of California, and they're required to uphold the laws of the state. So they're the ones being put in a difficult position where they have to choose. They didn't ask for this. It was thrust upon them. And what I'm trying to stress to everyone is, this is not about disgruntled employees. This is a classic separation of powers issue. The legislature gets to enact laws, or the voters, through the initiative process, like cash bail that California just voted to keep, that Mr. Gascon is not following. The judicial branch is authorized to rule on the legality of laws, and the executive, elected officials, aren't authorized to do either. They have to follow the law. So I've never seen a lawsuit like this on the level of district attorney, where we have seen similar lawsuits and similar legal issues is on the federal level, with questions about whether the president, this president and past presidents in history, have overstepped their boundaries by violating the Constitution or violating the separation of powers by trying to take action that was vested in, for example, in Congress.
I know it's about the law. I know it's about breaking the oath that you all took, but it's also personal. When you've spent your career fighting for victims and being so close to victims' families, in the length of cases and the relationships and the victims' families looking to you as the prosecutor for some sort of justice for their murdered loved ones, it's got to be personal for you to walk into a courtroom and act as another public defender or defense attorney and not fight for those victims and their families.
Well, it is. It is. And that, too, is a violation of the law, because one of the laws that we're being told to set aside is Marcy's Law, the Victims' Bill of Rights. And that isn't a state constitution, which we swore to uphold. Protecting victims and ensuring that their rights are not violated is something that we are obligated by law and by our oaths to do, and we're being told to violate those rights. Marcy's Law says all allegations shall be filed, that are appropriate. But it does feel like now that we have two public defenders in Los Angeles County and no one representing the public or the victims. So, like I said, the voters elected him, but the voters can't imbue him with additional authority. And that is something he appears to be trying to seize himself, and that's where we get into the separation of powers debate.
Michele, we appreciate your work. We appreciate what you do, and you make us smarter every time you're on, because yours was the first time anyone on this show has ever used the term obstreperous.
I'm so glad I could assist your vocabulary.
I'm going to Google this.
Yeah, we're going to have to look it up.
Moving forward.
We're going to have to practice that word. But we will keep in touch, and we'll, because we love this story as much as we hate it. So we'll definitely be in touch.
Anytime you want me, I'm happy to join you guys. Thank you so much.
Right, thanks, Michele.
Michele Hanisee there again, president of the Association of Deputy District Attorneys of Los Angeles.